Welcome back to the PreVetted Podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, I am joined by Jonathan Hernandez. He's an information security and risk professional at Nationwide Children's Hospital, an assist certified cybersecurity expert with experience spanning GRC, pen test, and regulatory compliance at companies like Liberty Mutual and State Auto. He's also a public speaker and a Master of Divinity student at Southern Seminary, which gives him a rare perspective on technology, faith, and human dignity. Jonathan immigrated from the Philippines and built his career from the ground up. He's passionate about purpose-driven work and the human side of security. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's a privilege to be here today, Federico. Thank you for inviting me today.
Yes, I'm honored to have you here today. So, for people knowing you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah. So I'm currently an information security analyst for a hospital in Columbus, Ohio, where I do risk, business continuity. I do a lot of stuff, and then that includes public speaking, training. I'm active also in the community by providing some security training, security awareness presentations, and whether it's about faith or about just for cybersecurity, and even the intersection between those topics. I also contribute by attending different conferences, by providing some insights from both two worlds, if you will. So yeah.
Amazing. So tell me about your life in Philippines and how was your experience when you arrived to the US?
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I was 19 when I moved here in the United States. That was 2016. So growing up in the Philippines, like a life was shaped by different rhythms of life, like a community, a vibrant, rich in relationships, if you will. And the Philippines has a lot of influence from the Western world, from Spanish to to the United States, and also we're influenced by Japanese just because of their history. So I have perspective about America when I came here. Like I'm familiar with Disneyland. I was watching like movies like Frozen, Marvel, X-Men, and those kind of stuff. So when I came here, I was looking for those things. When I arrived in Columbus, Ohio at that time, and I still remember the time when I asked my mom and my dad, like, "Hey, where's Disneyland?" And like, I'm looking for Disneyland, and I was just surprised that it's not in Columbus, Ohio, because I thought every state have their own Disneyland. I was so wrong, and I was telling my mom and my dad, like, "Hey, can we drive to Times Square because I want to go to New York?" I thought it's just like 2 hours 2 hour drive. So it was funny. And then I still remember the time when I came here and actually touching a snow for the first time. So I was watching this one from Frozen, and I was like, this one is nice. And then after 7 days, I want to go back home because it is just too cold. It's different, and I think when you arrive for the first time, you have this romanticized idea, of moving to a new country and then collides with the reality. Like, no, it's different, and there's a lot of obstacles that you need to face one by one, yeah.
Right. Very interesting. How was your experience with loneliness when you arrived?
Oh yeah, loneliness. Like I think since our culture is like big in family and community, and that those things are woven into your day to day thing. It's like you meet your uncle, your friends, and then suddenly go to a place where you don't even know someone. And another thing is like individualism is still big at that time. So I was like, man, like I'm adjusting to the whole culture, and I miss the warmth of dropping by of my friends, just like, hey, how are you doing? And I think there was a time in my life that I just cried. I think that was my second
Right.
month. Just like reality hits that I'm in a different country, that I'm going to start again from the scratch. And then, the identity that you have before is gone. And it's like, I don't know what to do. And you just need to be strong, and I learned a lot from that. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how did your faith show up during the harder part of immigration?
Yes. So I think when you immigrate, when I immigrate, you essentially lost your identity, your resume overnight. you lose your network, your community, your even the professional titles that you have, because I've heard this one from different from immigrants, like, excuse me, yeah, before there were a doctor, before there were a nurse, like to have a title, and now they're starting again. And it is sometimes hard. It is sudden. Sometimes it's just like you don't know what to do. And there's always a part of a person that, lean into optimism, trying to tell yourself like, hey, I'm sure everything will be all right, and those kind of stuff. But when you're in the middle of hardship, when you're facing rejection, like when you experiencing delays from your paperworks, and honestly you don't know what to do, when people are saying a lot of inaccurate words towards who you are, about your background, like sometimes optimism is not enough from drowning in anxiety, and I think that's where my faith showed up. It's not just about vague positive vibe, but it's a real anchor at that time. So I remember there's a Bible verse. It's like a First Peter chapter 5, verse 7. It said, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you, which is, just God. And that truth of the Christian worldview or faith is that my worth is not attached, or it's not entirely detached from my productivity or status, or what I can achieve on the paper. It's not who's defining me or what's defining me, but instead is anchored completely in what Jesus has achieved for me on the cross, as a Christian. And because of that one, that because of what he did for me on the cross, like I had some brokenness, I had some uncertainty that, that may change the trajectory of my life, but it doesn't have the final word in my story, if you know. Like it's not about the delays, it's not just about the what people are perceiving me. No, because at the end of the day, I know I was fully known and fully loved by God. And that shifted my perspective from a state of constant anxiety or people pleasing to peace. It's not about it's not just about the outcome. It's about, like trusting on the process. That whatever happens to me, that Jesus is it's not gonna leave me in the process. So I think that's helpful for me. So yeah.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah, have you experienced that one as well in some ways, like like as when you go to other places, like how do you feel that?
So for me, the immigration has also been challenging, but rewarding at the same time. It's
Right.
very interesting because as you said, you are, you don't have any network anymore. It's you alone in the world, in a different world, if you like, right?
Right.
So it is challenging. I met my wife here, so it was also very, very positive, right?
That's real.
But even though I've been here 17 years, I still feel that pain of having to leave the country, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I love Mexico, and I became a Mexican citizen, so I have great appreciation for the people, for the culture, and I fully integrated. But still, there is in the background a little bit of pain,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that has been my experience. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
So you said a career change is not about money, right? It's also
Yeah.
about purpose. When did that become real for you?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because that reality became real for me when I made a decision to pack up my life from Columbus, Ohio, to move to Louisville, Kentucky to attend seminary. So currently I'm a full-time, I work full-time, and then I'm studying full-time as well in seminary. So on the paper, there's a lot of people in my professional circles in Columbus, Ohio, where completely caught off guard, or completely surprised on my decision, because I was in a point of my life where Columbus, Ohio is booming. It's getting big in terms of technology. There's a lot of big companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon is going there. And, the
Nice.
trajectory point is like higher salary, prestige, honor, and professional fame. And to step away from that trajectory to study theology, like people were asking me like, what's going on with you? Like, why are you choosing that? And I think that is a good question for me, like what's driving me to move. And I remember one point of my life, I asked myself, what am I actually building my life on? Like what's my purpose? Because I realized that, a high salary can buy a lot of stuff, like, we could have comfort and those kind of stuff, but it cannot buy a firm foundation for me. I'm in a real serious relationship, and as I look forward the future and building a family in the future, I want to give my future wife and the children a solid foundation that won't crack, if you will, when the economy shifts or when a career path hits a wall. Like I want like something stable, and I want that foundation built on a faith, on character, and eternal purpose that we have. And that choice makes sense to me because faith is a central aspect of my life. Like the Lord has been good in my life. And, part of this one is the gospel tells me that, like money, status, applause are temporary. It's fleeting, you know, because there are people that I know that even though they have a lot of things in their life, but they cannot sleep at night just because of anxiety and all of the things that they're worried about. And they ask me, like, Jonathan, like, aside from all of the things that you've done, how can you do this one? Why are you not worried about things? Because I told them, like, hey, I'm worrying about things, because a lot of people are dealing with uncertainties and pain and suffering and those kind of stuff. But I told them, like, if I'm building my life on temporary things, even our life is temporary, it's like, it's gonna be disappointing. But if I invest my life knowing that God is there and investing my life to other people as well, mentoring people and just like helping them on their careers, whether cybersecurity or in faith, oh man, that is good for me. I have my purpose, so moving to Louisville at first seems a sacrifice for me, because, oh man, it's, like I remember there's some opportunities outside of United States, like expat positions that I need to turn down because I'm focused on seminary, But I just realized as I see myself right now, it's not a wasted sacrifice. It's an investment that I'm so happy with my work as well, And it's amazing that the Lord blessed me with a good job, with a good workplace, and a good community as well, where I could practice my profession and also serve my community as well at the same time. So yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that no money can buy a peace of mind, right? And
Oh, no.
happiness.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I think that's the key, right? I mean, have you heard of the story about the fisherman? I don't
No,
remember if
no,
I
no,
told you that story. So
no.
the fisherman is the an executive, an entrepreneur goes to a beach. The story is in Mexico, but
Mhm.
could be in many other places. And there is this fisherman that has a very small house and is just selling the fish that caught that day. And the businessman comes, the entrepreneur says, well, you can scale it up, you can build a franchise, you can buy more boats, you can
Mhm.
you can scale your business, right? And the fisherman was like, why? I mean, I wake up 5 a.m. I go and fish. I sell my fish. By noon, I'm free and I can spend the rest of the evening with my family. I have everything I need,
That's true. And the fish
right?
is always in the sea, though, right? It's always there,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so, from the fisherman perspective, he was fulfilled, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, what is the point of pursuing more? If you cannot be fulfilled with what you have, right?
That's true. And I think it's also about the discussion of contentment as well, as a person, right? And I think, yeah, I think that word is so important for me, because when I think there's always a temptation, at least for me, to ask for more things and I get disappointed. Like why I don't have this one, right? And then one day I wake up, I realize like, hey, a lot of people wants my job, and like a lot of people wants the life that I want. And then when was the last time that I become thankful for that? And I think it instead of I have a hard time on that. to be honest. Like sometimes, like there's always a time for me where I struggle to appreciate small things until one day I realized that, hey, instead of complaining, instead of, looking about what other people, what do they possess, what do they have? I just realized, like, you know what? A lot of people wants my job. A lot of people wants what I have. And yet, when was the last time that I become thankful for that? And now it changes my life. I become more grateful with what I have, and it enables me to help other people in a better way, knowing that I don't need to define myself on what I have, but on ways on what I can help other people as well. And you will see that your life becomes more better, becomes better.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, and what does living as a Christian look like for you, in your daily life while working on technology?
That is a good question because a lot of people ask me about it, especially here in seminary, like, hey, like you're working full time in cybersecurity and you become, a Christian. How do you balance that, right? And I'll share you a story. When I was still when I was pursuing my undergrad, I'll never forget my first ethical hacking class. My professor told the class, like, hey, the only thing that differentiates us, you from the criminals is your ethics. Like that is something
Right.
that he highlights. And then you're going to have the keys to the kingdom. You're the only barrier between you using that power for good and for the destruction is your internal, conscience, if you will. And then,
Right.
the things that you live by, because, we practice and we know stuff, right? What other people is doing, and our goal is to follow the rules. And I think that statement really haunted me for quite some time, and it forces me to ask a deeper question about myself. A question that, where do I actually ground my ethics? If that thing differentiates me from the hackers, like, where do I ground on this? And I think in our industry, like both of us are in IT, like, ethics is something that, like, is so important, because we follow the rules, right? And personally, I believe this, that if someone just think that ethics is just based on not getting caught or a shifting culture, I think it's a fragile, like, truth can be, can be flexible, but I think
Right.
for me, at that time, I was contemplating about this as a Christian, as a cybersecurity professional at that time. It's like ethics should be grounded first in the character of God and the scriptures. And, other people are saying, like, why? Why are you doing that? Because I think that is important for me, because even though I follow a lot of code of conduct, right? Code of rules, ethics of a professional bodies, if you will, at the end of the day, like, I am answering to my creator, because I believe that we're all image of God, and the right and wrong is something that is there, there's rooted on the creator who valued truth, justice, and the dignity of every human being, right? And if I have this, if I have particular ethics or measure of ethics or truth that is beyond me, that is good, because I'm accountable to him now, right? I'm not just accountable to the governing body. I'm accountable to God himself, and I think that helps me a lot, because I don't see other people just a mere, someone, it's like, this is something that I value. This person has a dignity. And I think that helps me a lot, especially when I was doing my ethical hacking practice before, like, without this moral compass, like, skills of a hacker can be dangerous, correct? And
Right.
but for me, it's my ethics, my belief is the anchor that keeps my technical power aligned with protecting people, rather than just exploiting them, because in addition to this one, it's like, I believe my skills in cybersecurity is not just in my 8 to 5 job. I see this one as an extension of my ministry, because this is my way to love people, to protect people, because in cybersecurity, this, right? In IT, we're dealing with the weaknesses, with vulnerability, with risk and trust. And I've seen people in our community where a lot of scammers are targeting these people, and,
Right.
and I told myself, like, hey, this is my purpose right here. I want to use these skills to educate them, to love them, to walk through with them and say, like, hey, instead of judging them, like, hey, why did you click the link? Like, hey, let me educate you why, when a church, when a nonprofit, when everyday person get hacked, they're not just being hacked, it shattered their peace of mind, so like, what did
Right.
I do wrong? Like, and other people are just judging them. And I think living out my faith is also means using that expertise to step into that gap. I use my technical skills to secure local churches, protect nonprofit, and serve people who cannot afford enterprise grade security, if you will, right? Because it's expensive. And I use these things to build relationship with people, as a mirror of what Jesus have done for me. Because I said, like, faith is really big for me. Like
Right.
what Jesus has done for us, like a story of rescue, protection, restoring that what was broken. And every time I help people, I'm not just helping them just because they need help. It's like I am reflecting, a fraction of the gospel through my action and through my words, and transform, like, hey, don't worry, I got you. I'm gonna help you, because I want to show the love
Right.
of God through my words and my deeds. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yes, yes.
And how are you personally defining success today?
That is, oh yeah, especially in our field, I think
Right.
if like, yeah, I think that is a really good question. Let me think about it. I think if you asked me a few years ago, I think I would define success about climbing the ladder, if you will, professional ladder, getting a lot of trophies, hitting a certain salary bracket, achieving a name or status in my field. And I think, yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad because I think those are good. But I think for me, I believe I'm in a unique position. I have a high paying tech career. I'm also pursuing seminary. And I think balancing those is eye opening. And I think it completely redefined how I view my life. So I think I'm gonna define success in two words. I think faithfulness and legacy. Like, I believe that true success is not just about corporate title. Like, I'm not letting my corporate title or my paycheck define my worth, because if I do that one, oh man, I'm gonna be anxious every day. It's like, am I secured on this? But for me, it's about building a legacy for my family on a foundation that would still be firm when something happens to us. And I think also for me, it's about looking past this life, because life is short. Like, we know this,
Right.
like, life is short. We could die tomorrow. So I always ask this to myself: if I stand today in front of the Creator, how would I define success then? If I stood before Him and He asked me, hey, why do I belong in His presence? Like, my answer would not be a single thing about my accomplishment. It's not about my cybersecurity career. It's not about my salary or my seminary degrees. If I tried to present my resume to have a perfect God, oh man, like, none of our resume can do it. So that's the reason why I'm building my life on the success that is defined through the point of Jesus. And I think throughout this podcast, I'm going to reference that over and over again. It's just because I see my life on that eternal success is realizing that it's not just about what we have in this world, because life is like temporary. Everything is temporary, right? It's about the transcendent. It's about eternity. And what Jesus did for us is, like, He lived a perfect life, died on a cross, paid for our debts, and rose again. So success means, for me, is using one of my key indicators. Like, success means using tech skills and resources that God has given me today to serve other people. That, while knowing that my ultimate security is already settled, that I don't need to prove myself to other people because it's already there. Like, I think once I have that one, once I know that my identity is already secured in God, I don't need to be insecure with a lot of things, that I could serve a lot of people, knowing that if ever people gets better than me or have a higher position than me, it's okay. And I would love for them to do that, because my purpose is, like, man, it's for them to glorify God in my life, through helping other people and to enjoy Him. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think about that? Yeah, I want to know your thoughts.
so while I was hearing you, it remind me to my definition that I learned from some book that I don't remember right now about happiness. So
Okay.
happiness is a mountain that has significant to you, right? Or to
Mm.
each of us, right?
Yes, yes.
It's our own mountain. So what is happiness? Happiness is not getting to the top of the mountain. It's about walking towards the top of the mountain. It's
Hmm.
enjoying that activity.
Right. The
That is
process.
happiness. It's a process because once we
Yeah,
reach, we look for another mountain,
that's
you know.
true. That's true.
And this mountain has to have some uphill. It has to have some challenge.
That's
Otherwise,
true.
if it's too easy, then
It's gonna
it,
be
it
like,
it's boring. It becomes boring for
yeah,
us. We lose purpose, right?
that's true.
So we need some challenge. We need to feel that we are improving, and because it has a personal significance, then we enjoy the act of climbing up.
That's true. Let me share a story about that. So I remember when I was starting my career, I think this one is like 2017 or 2018. I was trying to apply for my internship, like looking for a job. At that time I was working for a restaurant at that time. So I spent 2 years in a Chinese buffet. So since I'm immigrant, like I don't know how to speak English properly, so I'm just like trying my best to practice it every day. I talked to a lot of people. And then, so my dad told me, like, hey, Jonathan, it's time. It's time for you to look for a good IT job because at that time I'm pursuing cybersecurity. At first, I was scared. Like, it's comfort zone, it's a comfort zone in the restaurant. And then I tried to send my first resume. It was rejected. I told myself, oh man, like it's crazy, like I am. And then I think I was rejected multiple times. It was like, oh man, like there was a time that I was doubting, like if I'm gonna be successful. It's like how can I be successful in this? Like if people are not giving me a chance, There was a time that they told me like, hey, you're overqualified. There was a time like, you don't have experience, and I was like, can I get a good job? And then I tried to refine my resumes on that one. I still remember I was building different labs just to learn and to prove it to my manager, like, hey, this is my worth, this is what I can do, and those kind of stuff. And then I talked to someone. They mentioned like, hey, you just need to wait. Build yourself, refine what you have, and don't doubt who you are. Because I was at that time as an immigrant, I was doubting because I was like, there was a time that I was telling myself, like, am I a second class person? Just because like I don't know a lot. Is there a lot of people can hire me on this? And this particular person like, no, don't doubt yourself. You have your skills, just wait, and you'll be all right. And I'm so happy that I've learned that throughout that waiting, like you mentioned, like, the process, right? The climbing,
Right.
like I've seen how those moments build me up and to help me see that success doesn't always like this, going up. It's like there's like ups and downs, because you will cherish it. And now I remember like when people from the cybersecurity who's pursuing cybersecurity asking me some advice on that one, and they're facing almost the same struggles that I had before. And what I did is like, hey, you know what? Let's set up a time. Let's personalize your career, because I'm teaching how for them. I'm teaching how to reset to do or to approach their career. And also I created a document for like the starters, like, hey, these are the things that you need to learn, these are the certifications that you need to do, websites that you need to do. And I think creating that document and seeing other cybersecurity professionals that I know right now, like they got their job, I told myself that is so amazing. And then I still remember as well, like I during COVID, like I spoke to different schools overseas in the Philippines, because we had a nonprofit organization before called Exceed Philippines. We're a partner with different schools, and people are asking me like advices, like how I need to do this. Can you help me to be successful and those kind of stuff? And then I told them like, how do you define success first? Because I want to make sure that I'm helping you with the things that you're aspiring to be. And I think with the whole journey and until now, in the current moment of my life, it's like seeing other people walking beside you, in being successful in their own ways makes me happy. And I told myself, it's good. It's a good feeling.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yes. Yes.
So we're almost running out of time, but I
Yes.
have one last question to ask you.
Sure.
What does it mean to protect human dignity in an AI-powered world?
That is a good question right there as well. So yeah, I think being in a seminary and being in a tech sector gives me a unique perspective. So this is like something that I presented like at a conference recently. So I think in different places, there's always a temptation to accidentally define human work by what we can produce, with our efficiency and our speed, our data output, our ability to process information, right? And that's the reason why you see it in the news where people are experiencing this depression or this anxiety about AI replacing human beings, because at the background of that one is that we thought our worth is defined by like I said, efficiency or data, those about data output. But if your value is tied to just your processing power or your efficiency, and that the moment that AI model can do your job, oh man, like your perceived dignity now drops to zero. Like that creates anxiety, right? That's what I'm talking about. And I think protecting human dignity, both inside a company and our society, means reminding people that human beings like you and me are not just computers. We're people, right? And I think I'm happy to read this one over and over again, even if by the tech leaders, that, hey, human beings are still human beings. And I think that is a good reminder for us that like AI is something that we use, not to replace us, right? So in the Christian worldview, human dignity is not something that we earn through our productivity. Your dignity is there. It's not something that algorithm can replicate or take away. It is rooted in the fact that we are created in the image of God, that we have the capacity for relationship, because AI, cannot have the relationship that both of us have, right? Like Federico,
Right.
like we talk like this, right? And the intrinsic worth that we have as human beings cannot be simulated, right? And I think inside companies, that means designing systems that elevates and protecting people rather than treating them like data points, like just another, like a employee number for that,
Right.
because in society, it means like ensuring, like technology serves us, not us serving the technology, right? Because I've seen this one over and over and over again, through my friends, through my family members, that when they felt that their companies are treating them just like a mere computers or like just another employee number, and that hurts to hear that, because the being human is now reduced to how much can you output. And I
Right.
think we need to build a solid relationship with people to say like, hey, AI is coming and it's there, right? It's there as part of our progress. But I think it's a constant, solid reminder that even though AI is there, they can't replace you. Like when your dignity is secured, by the love of God, no technology shift can replace you. No corporate restructuring or no AI model can diminish your value, because you are loved by the Lord. He died for sinners like us. And I think we can see that one, that our worth is intrinsic to us because we're created by God and, we're not just machines. So, yeah.
Right. Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Jonathan, I truly appreciated you being here today.
Yes.
I think we had a very interesting conversation.
Yes.
Any final remarks before we wrap it up?
Yeah. So it's a privilege to be here today, and throughout this podcast, like maybe you're wondering, like Jonathan is an IT professional and he's talking about religion and those kind of stuff. And I can say that because faith is central to my, to our to my life, and I want to share that to people as well. In a world where in a world where everything is measured by what you can do and what by optimization and those kind of stuff. Like, hey, like look to God, and because it's there. Like God loves us, and He died for us, and the peace that you're looking for can only be found in God. And this reality helps me as an IT professional in numerous ways. And I want to extend it to people. And if anyone of you, like wants to talk more about this, not just the faith, but also the cybersecurity, like I'm happy to connect with you all. So yeah, it's a privilege, Federico, to talk to you again. It's amazing.
Yes, yes. I truly appreciate you being here today. I think we had a great conversation. So
Yes,
thank you,
yes.
Jonathan, for joining.
Yes, yes. See ya.